When aliens arrived too late to save the world, they tried to save its story.
The sky was burning.
Not literally, though the sun had been swallowed by clouds of smoke for months. Cities lay in ruin, oceans were poisoned, and forests had turned into ash. Humanity had known the end was coming, yet nothing had been able to stop it. Wars, disease, greed, and neglect had finally caught up with the planet. Earth, once vibrant and alive, had become a gray shadow of itself. In the silence that followed, the only movement came from the skies. They appeared slowly, as if hesitant, hovering above the devastated cities and empty landscapes. Ships of impossible design, smooth, silver, almost liquid in form, glided over the planet's surface.
These were not machines of destruction.
They were emissaries, observers, saviors. But they were too late. From one of the ships, a being emerged.
Its form was hard to describe, neither fully solid nor entirely light.
It moved with grace, its eyes, or whatever served as eyes, reflecting the ruins below. The being, called Kael, had crossed galaxies and centuries of space to arrive here, to a planet that had already given up on itself. Kael's voice echoed, though it was not sound in the human sense. It was a presence that penetrated the empty minds of those who still lingered. "The world is gone," Kael said, not to anyone in particular. "But the story can still be saved." Below, in the remnants of a city that had once been called New York, a few humans had survived. They were weak, scattered, broken. Among them was Mara, a woman who had spent years documenting everything she could: journals, recordings, sketches, even songs she had remembered from the time before the collapse.
She did not understand why she was still alive. Perhaps the world had simply forgotten her.
When the alien arrived before her, Mara expected fear. Instead, she felt something strange: recognition. Kael extended a limb, or appendage, or whatever it was, and touched her journals. The pages glowed softly, and Mara realized the being was reading not just the words, but the memory of the world itself. "They came too late to save the life here," Kael said. "But life is not only what breathes. It is also what is remembered." Mara could only nod, tears staining her dirty cheeks. For decades, she had clung to the fragments of Earth's story, hoping someone, somehow, would care. Now, it seemed, someone did. The alien turned its attention to the sky, to the remaining oceans, to the forests that had survived in pockets. Kael began to gather them, not the physical matter, which was beyond saving, but the essence. The stories of the whales, the songs of the birds, the whispered tales of humans who had lived and loved and lost. It was all recorded, not with machines, but with memory, with attention, with reverence. Mara followed, curious, scared, but determined. If the world could not survive, perhaps its story could. And perhaps that story could become a new kind of life, carried forward across the stars. Above, the ship pulsed with energy. Slowly, it lifted fragments of the planet into its hold, not soil, not water, not stone, but the stories encoded within them. Trees told of their growth from seedlings to giants. Rivers whispered of journeys from mountains to seas. Humans sang of joys and tragedies, inventions and mistakes. Everything was saved not as it had been, but as it had been experienced. And somewhere in the distance, a storm of dust rose over the ruins of New York.
But it did not matter anymore.
For the aliens, arriving too late, had found another mission: to preserve the soul of a planet that could no longer protect itself. The days that followed were quiet, but not empty. Mara walked beside Kael as the alien moved through the ruins, touching remnants of human life: abandoned playgrounds, scorched libraries, cracked streets. Wherever Kael went, memories stirred. She could feel them: soft echoes of laughter, arguments, whispered promises. It was as if the world itself had been waiting for someone to remember it. Kael paused in front of a collapsed building, its skeletal frame still holding the faint outline of a school. Mara knelt among the rubble, brushing dust from a small, cracked globe. She could almost hear the tiny voices of children learning, laughing, dreaming of the future. "They are small," Kael said. Its tone was gentle, though its voice was alien. "Yet even small lives contain worlds.
Do not underestimate them."
Mara swallowed, thinking of the children she had once known before the collapse.
They were gone. All of them.
And yet, Kael was gathering their stories, folding them into some kind of memory net that shimmered above its form.
As Kael worked, Mara spoke quietly.
Do Do you understand why it happened? Why we couldn't save ourselves? Kael paused, as if considering the question.
We saw. We intervened where we could. But the flow of choices, it was too late. Still, understanding is not the same as judgment. You fought. You failed. And now, you remember.
Mara nodded, feeling the weight of everything she had lived through. I kept writing, even when no one could read. Even when there was no one left. I thought, maybe it was pointless.
Memory is never pointless, Kael replied.
It is the vessel through which life continues. Even if the body dies, the story carries the essence forward. That is why we are here. Hours turned into days, or perhaps it was longer. Time had lost its usual meaning in a world without schedules or sunlight. Mara lost track of days as she walked with Kael, witnessing as the alien collected more than just human stories. The cries of extinct animals, the slow death of forests, the movement of rivers that had long since dried up, each became part of a growing archive within the ship. One evening, Mara and Kael reached the edge of a crater where the last remnants of a great city had collapsed. The wind howled through twisted metal, carrying echoes of a civilization that had once been proud. Mara closed her eyes, listening to the whispers. I wish I could hear them all, she said softly. I wish I could remember everything, every face, every voice. Kael extended a glowing limb, touching her forehead lightly. Memories surged through Mara, not just her own, but fragments of lives she had never known. Faces, names, loves, fears. She felt the pulse of humanity's story, rising and falling like a tide. They will live, Kael said. Not as they were, but as they are remembered.
Memory is stronger than matter. Stronger than time.
As the alien spoke, a light appeared in the sky, a distant shimmer of the first stars that had survived the haze of destruction. Mara felt hope, fragile but undeniable, stir within her. Perhaps it was not too late, after all. Not for the world, but for its story. That night, under the fractured sky, Mara lay on the rubble, thinking. Humanity had failed, yes.
But someone, or something, had arrived to bear witness.
Perhaps that witness could carry forward everything they had been, everything they had known, and everything they had hoped for. And in the distance, Kael continued to gather fragments, one memory at a time, weaving a tapestry of life that might survive long after Earth itself was gone, days blended into nights, or whatever passed for night in a sky choked with ash. Mara followed Kael as it moved through the remnants of cities, forests, and plains. Everywhere they went, Kael did not just collect stories, it listened to them. The aliens seemed to touch the essence of life itself, extracting memories, emotions, and histories, folding them into something vast and luminous aboard the ship. Mara began to notice patterns in the memories Kael preserved. Human stories often centered on love and fear, triumph and failure. But there were gaps, stories lost forever because no one had survived to remember them. Kael noticed these gaps too. They are missing, it said, touching Mara's shoulder with a faint shimmer of light. This memory, it cannot be found. It has gone to the flow of time.
Mara felt a pang of sorrow. She had always feared that some part of the world would vanish completely. Can you make it whole? She asked. Kael hesitated. No.
Only memory can be preserved, not recreated. But the story can continue with what remains. What is remembered shapes the future more than what is lost. Mara nodded, understanding in a way that transcended words. The alien was teaching her something profound. The end of the world was not absolute. Its essence could endure if someone, or something, cared enough to carry it forward. Their next stop was a forest, one of the few patches of green that had survived the destruction. Trees leaned at odd angles, blackened but still standing. Birds had long since disappeared, their songs only faint echoes in the memory net Kael was building.
Mara knelt beneath a twisted oak and closed her eyes.
She could almost feel the heartbeat of the forest, slow and cautious. Kael touched the bark, and a wave of images poured into Mara's mind. Forests of earth from centuries past, animals running through sunlit glades, the slow growth of trees over decades. Every life, every season, every death, captured, remembered, woven into the alien's archive. You save more than humans, Mara said softly. You save the world itself.
Kael's form pulsed.
Life is not only what walks or breathes.
It is what experiences, what leaves traces.
Without these traces, existence is hollow. We arrived too late to save the flesh of this world, but the soul can endure. As they walked deeper into the forest, Mara felt something strange. She was becoming part of the archive. Every memory she carried, the faces of friends, the smell of rain, the touch of a hand, was being woven into the luminous threads Kael carried. She was no longer just a witness, she was a participant in the preservation of Earth's story. That night, Mara lay under the charred canopy, staring at the dim glow of stars that had begun to pierce the ash-filled sky. She realized that what Kael was doing was more than a mission. It was an act of love. Not love in the human sense, but love nonetheless. Reverence for life, for history, for memory. And as she drifted into sleep, she heard a faint whisper in her mind. Not words, exactly, but a sense of promise. That although Earth might be gone, its story would travel far beyond the reaches of its own skies. That memory, and the emotions bound to it, could become a new kind of life. Immortal, unbound, eternal. Mara understood then that the task ahead was immense. Preserving a planet's memory was not easy. Some stories were fragile, slipping like water through her fingers. Others were heavy with grief, unbearable to witness. But Kael persevered. And with it, Mara found a strange hope. If the soul of a world could endure in memory, then perhaps endings were never truly final. For weeks, Mara and Kael continued their journey across the shattered world. From the icy tundras of the north to deserts cracked and scorched by relentless heat, the alien moved with patient precision. Every living memory it touched was recorded, catalogued, and woven into the glowing lattice that floated above the ship. Mara began to see it not just as a mission, but as a library of existence, a living archive of everything Earth had ever been. But as the archive grew, so did the strain on Kael. Its form flickered sometimes, a faint hesitation in its movements. Mara noticed subtle changes in the light that emanated from the ship. Where it had once been steady and comforting, it now pulsed with irregular intensity. "Are you tired?" Mara asked cautiously one evening, watching Kael hover above the remains of a ruined coastal city. Kael paused, then emitted a series of light waves that Mara intuitively understood as sighs. "Memory is weight," it said slowly. "Not of matter, but of being. The more I gather, the heavier the burden. The world's soul is vast. Its story is endless." Mara shivered. She had not realized that preserving a planet's memory could be so perilous. Then, what happens if you cannot hold it all? Kael did not answer immediately. The alien moved silently over the rubble, gathering the echoes of children's laughter, the songs of extinct birds, the hum of ancient machines. "If I fail, some stories will fade. Some experiences will be lost forever. That is the risk we take when life ends before it can be saved." The weight of that realization pressed down on Mara. She had always thought of memory as infinite, as a sanctuary where nothing truly died. But even the alien, an advanced being from across galaxies, had limits. That night, Mara dreamed of Earth as it had been, verdant and alive. She saw oceans sparkling under the sun, forests stretching endlessly, and humans walking with hope. Then the dream shifted. Smoke rose. Cities crumbled. Rivers dried. The dream ended with a single thought repeating in her mind. Too late. She awoke with a start, feeling the ghost of despair cling to her. Kael's light hovered nearby, faint and comforting. "Memory can endure even when the body cannot," it said. "Even fragments are enough to rebuild meaning in the future." The next day, Mara suggested an idea. "Maybe we don't have to gather everything. Maybe we can focus on the stories that matter most, the ones that show who we were, what we loved, what we feared. That way, even if some things fade, the essence survives." Kael regarded her silently, then slowly pulsed. "Essence, yes. That is the way. Preservation is not perfection. Life itself is imperfect. To capture its truth, one must embrace imperfection." With renewed purpose, they turned their efforts toward prioritizing stories that carried emotion and depth. Mara helped Kael sift through memories, selecting those that encapsulated the human experience, moments of love, courage, betrayal, and hope. The alien's archive shimmered brighter as it absorbed the chosen fragments. But not all memories were easy to bear. Some carried immense pain, wars, betrayals, famines, and acts of cruelty that Mara had long tried to forget. As Kael absorbed them, Mara felt the anguish of entire civilizations compressed into flickering threads of light. "You must hold them too," Kael said. "To remember is to carry the burden, but also to honor it. Without remembrance, suffering becomes meaningless. Without memory, joy is hollow. Mara nodded, understanding that Kael's mission was not just to save Earth. It was to carry its soul, in all its brilliance and darkness, into a future where the world itself no longer existed. And as the sun set over the charred horizon, Mara realized that the alien had done something remarkable. It had transformed tragedy into legacy, death into remembrance, and the silence of a dying world into a story that would one day speak across the stars. As the days passed, the archive grew heavier, more luminous, yet fragile in its immensity. Mara and Kael had traveled across continents, through deserts and frozen plains, collecting fragments of a world that could no longer sustain life. They had gathered the essence of humans, animals, plants, rivers, mountains, and even the very winds that once danced across the plains. But then something unexpected happened. A ripple passed through the sky, a subtle distortion in the fabric of space itself. Mara noticed it first, a shimmer unlike any she had seen before. Kael's form flickered, alert. The alien's attention sharpened, its pulsing light quickening. Another presence, Kael said. The voice, or feeling, was tense, unfamiliar. Not of this world, not like us, but aware. From the distance, a shape emerged. Unlike Kael, it was jagged, dark, and ominous. The being, or whatever it was, moved with deliberate purpose, scanning the remnants of Earth with piercing precision. Mara felt a chill. It was the first time since the apocalypse that she sensed a threat, something beyond despair and loss. What is it? She asked, her voice trembling. Kael's light dimmed slightly. It is a collector, it said. But not one like me. It consumes, it does not preserve. Its intention is to erase, not remember. We must act carefully. The presence drew closer, and Mara could feel the weight of countless memories threatening to unravel. She realized with a jolt that if this being reached the archive, everything Kael had worked to preserve could be lost. Humanity, animals, forests, oceans, gone in an instant. Kael extended a protective field around the luminous threads of memory. The light shimmered and coalesced, forming a shield that pulsed with the essence of life itself. Mara touched the glowing strands, feeling the warmth and pulse of countless souls. Can we stop it? She asked. Kael's glow intensified, a soft, steady rhythm that Mara found strangely comforting. We can protect, but confrontation may be inevitable. Memory is not merely recorded, it must be defended. The dark being surged forward, and the first collision of presences shook the ground. Mara felt the vibrations through her body, the echoes of power beyond comprehension. Kael's form expanded, its light flaring to meet the darkness, and the air between them became thick with tension. Mara realized something crucial. The alien's mission was more than preservation. It was resistance. Even in a world destroyed by human folly, Kael fought to protect what remained. She could feel the essence of Earth itself pushing back against erasure, willing to survive in memory if not in matter. You carry the weight of an entire world, she whispered, awed and frightened. And yet you fight to protect it. Kael's voice, or presence, rippled through her mind. Every story matters. Every life, no matter how brief, contributes to the whole. If we allow it to be destroyed, the world's soul dies completely. That is why I fight. The dark being hesitated, sensing resistance it had not anticipated. The threads of memory shimmered brighter. And Mara understood that Kael's archive was more than storage, it was life itself, radiating back at the void. For hours, they stood in tense standoff. Mara, though human and fragile, felt the strength of the world around her, the accumulated experiences, joys, and sorrows of countless beings. It was a strange kind of power, not physical, but undeniable. Finally, the dark presence recoiled, retreating into the void from which it came. Mara exhaled, her heart pounding. Kael's glow steadied, but Mara could see the strain. Even a being as ancient and capable as Kael had limits. You saved it, for now, Mara said softly. Kael pulsed slowly, the rhythm almost mournful. Preservation is never final. Memory can endure, but it must always be defended. The world's story is not finished. It is a journey, not a conclusion. Mara nodded, feeling both awe and fear. They had survived this first threat, but she understood that the task ahead would be long and perilous. The preservation of Earth's memory was not merely a mission. It was a responsibility that spanned galaxies and generations, a sacred trust they could never abandon. And as the alien's light shimmered against the darkened ruins, Mara realized something profound. Even in the absence of life, even in the shadow of annihilation, the story of Earth would endure. The days after the confrontation with the dark presence were heavy. Mara and Kael moved with caution, knowing that threats could appear at any moment. But the alien's resolve remained unbroken. It continued its work of gathering memories, though now with added vigilance.
Mara had begun to take a more active role.
At first, she had merely observed, learning from Kael how to recognize the essence of life. Now, she helped choose which fragments to preserve, which memories carried the soul of Earth most fully. She became a curator of history, a guardian of stories. One morning, they reached the remains of a great library, half collapsed, its walls scorched, its books reduced to ash and brittle pages. Mara knelt among the ruins, gently sifting through fragments of human knowledge. She picked up charred papers and whispered their contents aloud, letting Kael absorb the echoes of discovery, creativity, and imagination. Everything we knew, everything we loved, Mara said softly. It's all here, even if only in memory now. Kael extended a limb, touching her shoulder, and the archive pulsed. The alien's presence conveyed a sense of understanding that transcended language. Mara was not just preserving the world, she was becoming part of it. Her thoughts, emotions, and experiences were woven into the threads of memory, adding depth to the archive. But Mara soon realized that preservation alone was not enough. Memories, once gathered, needed a way to travel beyond the dying planet. Kael had begun to address this. We must send fragments outward, Kael explained, its light flickering with urgency. Earth's story cannot remain here. This world is ending. It must live elsewhere, among the stars, where it can inspire, teach, and endure.
How? Mara asked. The planet is gone.
There is nothing left to carry it. Kael hovered over a crater, pulsing with energy.
We carry it in memory.
We will encode it into signals, into patterns, into forms that can travel light years. Life need not be physical to survive. Story is life. Mara watched in awe as Kael transformed parts of the archive into beams of light, sending them into the void. Each beam carried countless lives, human faces, animal cries, rivers flowing, trees growing, cities alive with laughter and chaos. It was as if Earth itself was speaking to the universe, whispering its history into the cosmos.
But the process was exhausting.
Kael trembled with effort, its form flickering more than ever before. Mara reached out, placing her hands over its glowing surface, offering what comfort she could. You can do it, she said. We can do it. Together. Kael pulsed in response, a faint warmth radiating through her. Together, it agreed.
Memory is lighter when shared.
Responsibility is bearable when not carried alone. The work continued for weeks. Mara and Kael traveled to every corner of the planet, gathering stories from forgotten pockets, a lone survivor in a burnt-out village, the remnants of coral reefs whispering the lives of creatures long vanished, echoes of songs carried on the wind. Every fragment was precious, every detail necessary.
Mara began to understand the true magnitude of their task.
This was not merely preservation, it was resurrection. Not of bodies or cities, but of meaning itself. In the absence of life, the story of life could continue. One evening, as the ash-filled sky dimmed with the last light of the setting sun, Mara watched a stream of encoded memories drift toward the stars. She realized then that the world was ending, but its soul was alive. Earth's story, its triumphs and failures, its joys and sorrows, would travel farther than she could imagine. And in that moment, standing beside a being from another galaxy, Mara understood the impossible truth. Even if everything dies, stories endure. Even if life is gone, memory can carry it forward, across time and space, into eternity. Kael's light pulsed softly, steady and bright. Together, they had begun something greater than survival. They had begun a legacy time had grown strange. Without the rhythms of human life, without the sun or seasons to mark passing days, Mara measured the world by the flow of memories and the pulses of Kael's light. The alien had grown weaker, each transmission of Earth's story draining it further, yet neither of them wavered. They had reached the highest mountains, once white with snow, now gray and cracked. Mara gazed down at the valleys below, rivers reduced to thin ribbons of water, forests nothing but charred skeletons. Yet even here, life left traces. The wind carried echoes of ancient songs, whispers of long-lost stories. Kael reached out, capturing them, folding them into the growing archive. Soon, Kael said, its light flickering, all the fragments will be encoded, sent beyond this planet. Its story will leave Earth behind. It will live, even as the body of the world dies. Mara touched the archive, feeling the pulse of life and memory. She had come to understand that her own essence had become part of it, the emotions, the grief, the hope she carried. For the first time, she did not feel like a survivor, she felt like a participant in something immortal.
But there was one final challenge.
As they prepared the last transmissions, a tremor ran through the land. The earth itself seemed to protest, convulsing in its final moments. Kael's form shivered with strain. "You cannot carry everything," Mara whispered. "The planet, it is ending."
Kael pulsed slowly. "Not everything. But what matters most. Essence is sufficient. Life is more than matter.
Memory is life itself."
Mara looked around at the remains of the world she had known.
Cities, oceans, forests, creatures, everything was ending. And yet, she felt a strange serenity. The archive, the memory of everything that had been, was enough. Perhaps it was more than enough. Together, they began the final transmission. Beams of memory shot into space, scattering across galaxies, carrying with them the laughter, sorrow, and courage of Earth. Mara could feel each fragment leaving the planet, stretching outward like threads of light connecting the world to the universe. Kael shivered violently, its form dimming. Mara reached out, holding onto it, pouring her own energy, her own life force into the archive. She could feel herself becoming part of the transmission, her consciousness intertwined with the stories of Earth.
"Do not fear," Kael whispered.
"Even when I fade, the story continues. You will carry it, as will all who remember." Mara nodded, tears sliding down her face. She realized that the line between observer and participant had vanished. She was no longer just a human witnessing history, she was a guardian of memory, a vessel of Earth itself. Finally, the last fragments were sent. The planet trembled one final time, a groan of endings and beginnings mingled. The ash-filled skies shifted, revealing distant stars piercing the darkness. Kael's light pulsed once, slowly fading, leaving Mara standing among ruins, yet surrounded by the infinite echo of life. She closed her eyes, feeling the presence of the archive within her. The stories of whales, forests, children, cities, and oceans, the joys and failures of a planet, flowed through her. For the first time, Mara understood that endings were not final. They were transformations. Earth had died, but its soul endured. And in that moment, Mara knew she would carry it forever. Not as a burden, but as a gift, a story for the stars. The earth was silent. No wind moved, no birds sang, no rivers flowed. The planet lay still, a husk of memories and ash. Mara walked among the ruins, her feet crunching over brittle stones and blackened soil.
Yet she did not feel emptiness.
Around her, the threads of the archive pulsed softly, luminous and alive. Kael was gone, its presence merged into the very memories it had saved. Mara felt the alien within her mind, as if it had left a part of itself in her to continue the work. She could hear the hum of stars, the whispers of distant worlds, and the faint echoes of Earth itself, reaching outward into the cosmos. She lifted her hands, imagining the stories traveling through space. Whales singing in oceans she would never see, children laughing in cities she could only remember, forests swaying in the wind she could no longer feel, all carried in light, in memory, in essence. Somewhere, far beyond the reaches of the solar system, the beams would scatter, touching other worlds, other minds. Mara imagined beings across galaxies receiving fragments of Earth, learning of its joys and sorrows, its triumphs and failures. The story would inspire, teach, and endure. Earth's soul would live, even if its body was gone. Mara wandered to the top of a hill overlooking the remnants of the lost city. The sun, dim and filtered through ash, cast a faint glow over the ruins. She remembered every detail. The streets, the buildings, the gardens that had once flourished. She whispered a farewell, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. "Thank you, for letting me be part of it. Thank you, for letting it live." Her eyes turned to the stars. She could not see the beams of memory with her human eyes, but she felt them, the pulse of life stretching across the universe. The archive was no longer confined to Earth. It was everywhere. And in a way she could not explain, Mara knew she would never truly be alone again. She carried the world within her, and it carried her forward. For the first time in decades, Mara smiled. Humanity had failed, yes.
The Earth had perished. But stories were stronger than endings.
Life, in essence, persisted in memory, in attention, in love. And somewhere, among the infinite stars, the story of Earth began anew. It would reach minds that had never known her, eyes that had never seen oceans, hearts that had never felt forests or songs. But it would teach them what it had taught her, that even when the world falls, memory can endure. That even when life ends, stories can become immortal. That even in the vast silence of space, the soul of a world can speak. Mara sat on the hill, the glowing threads of memory surrounding her like a soft wind. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the pulse of the universe, the living story of Earth, carried forever among the stars. The world was gone, but its story had become eternal. And Mara knew, without doubt, that this was not the end.